Welcome to another episode of VGN Weekly. Members of the Virtual Grip crew will recap the previous week's races and bring us one-on-one interviews with racers, league owners, and commentators, as well as others from within the sim racing community. Please like and subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our broadcasts. If you are a league owner or potential sponsor and have a broadcasting need, please visit virtualgrip.net for info on how to get in touch with us. Thanks for tuning in today. Now let's go find some grip.
The Bootleg Racing League Outlaw Modified Invitational Series visited Nashville Fairgrounds for round 7 of the season. With 22 cars on the grid, it would be hard for drivers to navigate the traffic, and Steven Spies took advantage of his pole position to quickly scoot away from the field. The field slowed on lap 10 for the first caution of the night when Kurt Smith got turned around and caught the series point leader, Alan Wanamaker, up in the chaos. The race would find its groove for the next 25 laps, but a series of cautions would slow the pace, including a restart melee on lap 58 that would collect several contenders and thin the running order by a few cars. Steven Spies would launch away from the field on the ensuing restart, pulling over 2 seconds ahead of the rest of the field en route to his first victory of the season in convincing fashion, leading all 100 laps of the race. The Bootleg Racing League Late Model Invitational Series went to Nashville for the second of our doubleheader events on Saturday night, with Joe Segala starting from the pole. Some early cautions would slow the pace, but John Wilson didn't let that deter him as he took the battle to Segala 13 laps into the race, almost throwing it away on the exit of turn 2 when the car got just a little tail happy. Wilson would eventually complete the pass for the lead and would hold that spot until just after the halfway point of the race. That was when Todd Liston turned to the bottom and battled side by side for the lead in a thrilling battle. Liston would face late pressure from Steven Spies in the double nickel car, but Liston would hold on to collect his first victory of the season in the BRL Late Model Series at Nashville.
Welcome to our conversation. I am John Hine, and this week we welcome an old friend of VGN. It's none other than DJ Clark. We are pretty sure DJ's first broadcast with us was with GSRC, and he was in the booth with both Soup and Sean for a BRL Outlaw Modified race. He's done a lot of work for GSRC and others, and now occasionally works for VGN. You might have even heard his voice on this very broadcast. He was also the voice of the BRL Dirt Streak Stot series, and we'll get into that. But currently, he works for IndyCar. And I'm going to welcome in right now, DJ. How are you doing, man?
Doing well. It's a beautiful Sunday. Unfortunately, my Colts lost, but that is par for the course this year. So we just keep on trucking.
Well, at least nobody's doing this. I think
Yeah.
Flacco. I mean, you guys played a good team today, so. But yeah, it's good to talk to you. It's been a long time since you and I have talked, and we worked together a couple times on a couple on different broadcasts and stuff like that. So I'm excited to have you here, and I want to start by just talk to me about how you found iRacing. Did you start driving, or did you get into broadcast? What led you to the GSRC and get that whole thing started?
Um, it was the driving angle, believe it or not. I first, bought a sim, quote unquote, and by that I mean a very cheap wheel and pedal strapped to my desk. In fall of 2019, and started to really get into it and really work. And kind of when the pandemic hit, I needed a fix. I needed my racing broadcast fix, and so I started watching sim racing as a way to just keep engaged and keep watching racing. And believe it or not, there was a post on Reddit of all places that said, "How do you become a sim racing commentator?" And they said just email the companies. And so I did. I emailed a couple of them. GSRC got back to me right away, and I jumped on a phone call with Joe Peak, and he and I immediately hit it off. And they put me in the booth shortly thereafter. And you were right. My first broadcast I ever sat in on to listen to was actually a BRL broadcast doing the Dirt Street Stock series. Um, and taking feverish notes and doing all that, and then one thing led to another, and they put me in at pit lane, virtual pit lane, and then started having me do color and play by play as time went along.
Were you doing any other kind of broadcasting up to that point? I mean, what is your background in all that?
No, I had never done a broadcast before in my
Really?
life. My background is theater.
Dude,
um,
you got a radio voice, man. I would have figured you were a DJ somewhere or something.
no,
Wow.
I have a degree in theater, and I have a master's in screenwriting. I'm originally
Really?
Yeah, I'm originally from Indiana. I went to undergrad in Tennessee and fell in love with writing, and talked to some people, and they basically said, if you want to make a living at this, you've got to move to Los Angeles. And so I moved to LA, got a master's in screenwriting, and worked in the industry for 10 years.
Wow.
Um, and
Anything that we would recognize or have
no,
watched? No.
no. I
I would
did.
imagine that's awful cutthroat out there,
Oh,
so
it's very, very cutthroat. The only thing that I ever really got put on was a student film that I wrote for a girl that I was dating at the time. Um,
nice.
but I worked in development. I worked in talent management. I worked in literary management. That's actually how I discovered iRacing in the first place. Was when I was working in development, I was trying to come up with ideas for shows, and I came up with an idea that was put 10 Joe Schmoes in a racing simulator and have them be coached by a Dale Earnhardt Jr. or a James Hinchcliffe, or somebody that's got a little bit of that crossover appeal, and see who could put the best lap time down. And in researching that and going, oh, this is a fun idea, I came across iRacing and said, oh, this is the software we ought to use.
Very, very cool. Well, once you started down the route with Joe and all of them, you talked about taking notes and all that kind of stuff. Do you remember your first broadcast?
I was actually thinking about this the other day. Um, the first broadcast that I don't remember the first one that I was on pit lane for, because the way they would do it is you would come in as a virtual pit lane reporter and, kind of learn the ropes a little bit and, like you do in real life, go to pit stops and then cover the pit stops and that kind of thing. The first one I was in the booth for was the Daytona prototypes, the old like Tudor, the Riley, and the Corvette racing the Daytona Oval.
I
It
remember
was
those
some
Rileys. I love those
Yeah,
Rileys.
yeah, it was some weird one-off thing that they had me do, and I remember jumping in on that. But I remember even from the beginning it being something very serious, and I took it very seriously. I was on a bachelor party in 2020, which was flying during that time and making sure everybody was safe and, pre-screening and post-screening and all of that to make sure we could pull it off. But I remember being in this cabin in Gatlinburg and having my laptop and a tablet all pulled up, because God forbid I called out of a broadcast, I had to be on it. I was that devoted to it.
Wow. Have you ever gone back and watched any of those, like really like your first, handful of broadcasts?
No. Um, I will tell you, I'm putting together. I'm in the process of putting together a new reel, which is something I like to do every off season, both to just stay current and also it's kind of good for my mental health to just look back and take stock of what I've done. But even putting together the reel, watching stuff back from 6 months ago, I'm critiquing it and I'm going, oh, I
Yeah.
could do that so much better. I could, and that's one of the reasons I love this job.
Yeah.
Um, it is the quest of perfection, and you're never going to have a perfect broadcast, and yet you always want to have one.
Yep. I mean, I actually do the same with this show, and go back and it's crazy to go back and look at the first show to kind of like where we are now, and it's leaps and bounds better and everything else. But yeah, that's tough not to critique. But I didn't know if you kind of got some satisfaction, like, oh my gosh, look where I was and look where I am. I was going to ask you how eye-opening that is for ones you've gone way back for.
I mean, it's pretty remarkable. Um, it's one of those things that it's a little bit strange because a lot of the stuff that I'm doing nowadays it's a different muscle. I'm doing a lot more interviews. I'm doing a lot more true pit lane reporting as opposed to what I did a lot of when I was first starting out, which is play by play in color. Um, and yet, I watch some of the new stuff that I've done and I compare it to some of the stuff when I was doing 4 or 5 broadcasts a week, 2, 3 a day almost kind of thing. Um, and there was a natural flow that I had in those moments that sometimes I watch broadcasts today and I just go, oh, I'm too stiff. I got to loosen up a little bit. So there's always that kind of play that you're looking for, I think, when you go back and watch, and there's always something to critique and to go, I can do better.
Well, then what did you upgrade first? Your driving equipment since you got into iRacing to kind of drive, or microphone equipment? What did you upgrade first?
Uh, so I upgraded my wheel and pedals first. I got a Thrustmaster T300 with the load cell pedals that served me very well for a number of years. Um, then I started upgrading my microphone setup. And I had the HyperX microphone for a while, and then I had an Elgato 3. Um, and then finally This was about 2 years ago, I think. I settled on these, the Audio Technicas. And the audio and the video camera setup and the multiple screens and all of that. I just redid my office, hence the boxes. And it's
No,
nowhere.
and nobody's looking at the boxes. They're looking at the Ayrton Senna helmet.
That's fair.
That's that's where my eyes went. As soon as you pulled up your screen, bam, my eyes went right to that Senna helmet.
There you
So
go. If you can't tell, I am a huge Senna fan. And I have like 4 more posters around the room from Senna. But yeah, I upgraded that, and I finally, as of last week, have an actual functioning sim rig.
oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, I bought Track Racer T80, I think, cockpit and all of that, Fanatec DD1, whole 9 yards. Which is
So
really cool. I work for SRO as one of my jobs with Fanatec GT World Challenge America. And it was kind of one of those things that I always wanted to have Fanatec stuff. I wanted Fanatec, and I have it, and it just feels very cool.
so now that you got a whole rig though, are we gonna see on track at BRL maybe once, twice, surprise drop-ins?
I try to.
Nice.
I know in this off season I am gonna do because my love on the sim is what I'm really good at is open wheel oval.
Okay.
Um, you know, I work for IndyCar. It's part and parcel. Um, and that's what I really love. But I came up when I was working my way through the ranks. I was doing SK mods,
Yep.
and so I do have a love of short track and doing that. So I'd love to pop in at some point and see if I can maybe see what I can do. It'd be super fun, and I have time.
You
It's the
know
off season.
what would be really cool since you're an Indiana guy, maybe somehow we could talk Lowell into a dirt race at Kokomo
There
and
you go.
get the open wheelers on that.
Yeah, it's
But
I
that would be
well,
fun.
Lowell knows this. I used to go to Kokomo all the
Yeah,
time.
very cool.
Um, yeah, and that was. I remember at one point when I was talking to my dad about the sim and being like, "Yeah, they've got all this stuff," and he's like, "Okay, whatever." And Kokomo was what sold him. Is that I said, "Dad, they have dirt," and he went, "Really?" I said, "They have Kokomo," and he went, "Oh, this is cool."
Yeah, and not just the track, but I mean, you can run winged,
Yep,
non-winged. Did you? I mean, yeah. I mean, the whole
everything. Yeah,
gamut of dirt. Yep, everything. Street stock, no matter what you want.
yeah.
Well, and speaking of dirt, that's one of the things that here with as far as BRL, you were the voice of the dirt
Mhm.
on VGN there while it existed. Um, Tell me what was your thoughts on that whole experience, and what was your favorite points of that?
Um, I loved calling dirt. Like I said, I grew up going to Kokomo and, Indiana Sprint Week and all of that. And even out here in California, whether it's Ventura or whether it's,
Oh, I love
Paris,
Ventura.
yeah, out in the Inland Empire, I'll pop in the car, go drive 2-3 hours to go see a dirt race. I think it is the true test bed for driving for young American drivers that you've got to be able to drive on dirt. And so I've always had a love for it. And when I got called in to be able to call it, it was so much fun. Because it constantly keeps you on your toes. You never know what's going to happen. Um, and it's a different sensory experience than calling a road race. When you're doing a road race, it's much more laid back. You're having more time to fill. When you're on dirt, it's just constant ba 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 ba. And I was thinking about when I was waiting some of my favorite moments actually, and obviously Brandon Proudfoot and his run of dominance. The couple championships that it came really close between him and JR. I was thinking about seeing those runs, and my favorite part of that series is the same. It's the same thing that I love when I call any series for an extended period of time, and that is the drivers, the personalities, the friendships that you make. Because as a commentator, you get to share this moment of pure elation with them. If they win or if they crash out and lose the championship, you're there to console them. One of the hardest moments for me this year was I was at the 500 and when the last lap pass happened, I was on Pato duty. And I had to go talk to Pato. And that was really, really difficult. And ended up having a wonderful conversation with him the next weekend in Detroit. And just kind of said, hey man, I'm sorry I had to do that. I'm sorry I had to stick a mic in your face. And he's like, dude, it's your job. I get it.
Yeah.
Fine.
Have you ever gotten to call dirt, just in real life dirt race or anything like that?
No, I have not. The only dirt calling I've ever done is on the simulator. I'd love to get out and try it. It just gets tough because now with me, flitting all over and flying to wherever in the country, they need me around a weekend, and I can't really come in and swing because I haven't built up that kind of reputation.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is you talk about, the cadence, dirt, it's bam, 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 bam compared to road, compared to short track. How hard do you find it to mold your cadence to, I don't want to know, maybe the audience or the type of race? How hard is that to do for you?
It's something that I am very cognizant of now.
Hmm.
Um, I think when I first started, I didn't really think about it all that much, and I just kind of let things fly. And now, depending on what I'm calling, I try to really find the balance, depending on the series, depending on what it is, between being a professional, quote unquote, and having that sort of decorum when you think of the great commentators over the years, whether it's Bob Jenkins or Lee Diffie or Bob Varsha or Rick Allen or any of these folks, Alan Bestwick. You think of them in this very professional sense, but you also want to bring your own personality and flavor to it. And so it's a constant balancing act that I think about now when I go into a booth a lot more than I used to. And there's always the trap to fall into, to be a little bit more kitschy, to be a little bit more goofy and having a little bit more fun, and we're doing this. And keeping it up to where you want these high journalistic standards to be. So yeah, it is something I think about.
The the prep work, how much has that changed between the different disciplines?
The less I know about a series, the more I have to prep for it.
Fair enough.
When I came into IndyCar, the actual IndyCar of it all, I had to do very little prep work because I'm a huge IndyCar fan, and I had been following it. I haven't missed a 500 in 21 years. I'm
Wow.
that guy. I'm that guy. But I
Which
did a
is
lot.
cool which is very cool, by the way.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
But the flip of that is I did a lot of prep for Indy Next because I didn't know a lot of these drivers. I didn't know a lot of their stories. I hadn't been told their stories. When I first started in SRO, I had to do the same thing. I really dove into a lot of these folks, and you'll definitely see is when the season starts, I'm doing a lot of prep and I'm doing a lot of focusing in. And then I've kind of made the conscious decision of once I get a good lay of the land, I can tell a story about everybody. I kind of know what it is. I tend to like to have a color analysis, or a color analyst, that's the right word, that can add in those stories. I really watch Lee Diffie when he calls a race because he's the master at it. He knows
Yes.
more than anybody else in that room, arguably, but he will not insert himself into the conversation unless he ultimately needs to. And he is amazing at laying it off.
Yeah, the thing I like about Diffie is he paints such a picture with his words, and and it just flows out of him so naturally. The only other broadcaster that I can think of that was that eloquent was actually Ken Squire.
Yeah.
Um, Ken was really, really good at just really painting a detailed picture. Whenever you listen to him, it worked for TV, it worked for radio.
Yep.
It didn't matter how you were consuming the race, you got the same picture. I mean, it was really remarkable what those guys do, and Lee does a lot of the same, in my opinion. And I gotta imagine though that is hard to do though. Um, you know, to I mean, how do you? Everyone always talks about, gosh, how hard it is to be able to go. How do you get that flow though? How do you go about pulling the right words to paint the right picture? I mean, is there a knack to it? Is it? I mean, how do you do that?
It's one of those things that I can't describe. I really can't. I wish
That's fair.
I wish I had words to put into it. The only explanation I
Because
can give
because I
you.
say that because you did that in those dirt races. Those dirt races you called
Thank you.
were some of the best broadcasts you will find anywhere. No disrespect to all the other fine broadcasters out there, but those broadcasts and you and how you, like I said, painted that picture was pretty close to what Lee and Ken did, and it was just remarkable. That's why I was asking. And you don't
Thank
know.
No, I have no idea. I mean, the only thing I can attribute it to is the improv classes that I took in college.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and just being able to think on my feet and frankly, just watching racing constantly. If it's the weekend, I don't care if it's sports cars, if it's NASCAR, if it's IndyCar, if it's Formula One, if it's endurance, if it's sprints, whatever. If it's on, I have it on. Um, and I will kind of take notes. I'll sit there and go, "Oh, that's really interesting. Listen how he did that." Or, not just pick up on the good, pick up on the things that I'm like, you know what? I don't like that. I don't like the way that that was done. I don't want to do it that way. Make a mental note of that.
I can see that. As someone who sat over in the other seat as a color guy, and Soup does a great job of this too. Is just how stuff just kind of comes out naturally. Now, granted, with Soup, sometimes you got to keep your composure because he's got he's got his soupisms that can catch
He
you off
does.
guard,
He does.
and there's nothing wrong with that. We love him, but I can just having been close to it and sit in the booth next to you guys and listen to you guys do your work. It's given me a greater appreciation of what you guys do. I mean, I could never do it. Um, and I've always wanted to seek to understand that. I guess I'll have to continue wondering. Um,
Well, but I'll throw it back to you. You make it when you are in that booth alongside me. When you and I were calling those races and doing that, you made it so easy because you were able to give that technical analysis and the mechanical analysis to really complement the word picture that I was painting. You were able to come in with those fine details and translate that into a little bit more of the gearheads to really go into the weeds. And having that person alongside you, it allows me to just kind of go, okay, I just got to talk about what's happening, and then you'll fill in the rest. And it's a huge safety blanket that builds that show.
oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm a halfway decent driver, so usually that means I know more than my talent. So that usually helps out a lot.
Yeah.
I know how to do a lot of things. I may or may not be able to do them, but by God, I know how to. I know of them anyway. Um, well, we talked about Soup real quick. We're gonna have Soup and Sean on here together, and you've had the
Oh
ability to
man.
work with. Yes, you know where I'm going. Any advice you have for me about having both these guys on at the same time in the show? Do I just cut my mic, stand back? How do you think I should run this?
Same advice that Billy Crystal gave to anybody acting opposite Robin Williams. Grab a saddle and hold on. No, I
Yeah,
mean, those
that's what
two
I was
guys,
afraid of.
yeah, those two guys are incredible.
Yeah.
Both of them I very much attribute for a lot of my style and a lot of my putting things together in the way that I did. I used to wake up at like 5 in the morning West Coast time to jump on races with the two of them. And all three of us were, complaining about the fact that we're like, wait a minute, what are we doing? This is 5 a.m. We're all in California. Why couldn't we get any East Coasters to be on this broadcast?
Yeah, those two, sometimes when duos or bands or whatever, they've got that it.
Yeah.
Those two had that it.
Yep.
And I remember the first race I called with Soup. I've never been nervous about calling a race. I was nervous with him, just because I didn't want to screw anything up because he's so good.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was on there with both Sean and Soup on a broadcast, and again, that nervousness, everything else, just because, like I said, those guys are so good.
Oh yeah.
Um, and you said yourself though, it helped kind of mold you. How so? How did their styles help you?
I really attribute those two and Joe Peak. The three of them really in that collective GSRC group. Just kind of taught me how to approach it, how to compose myself when I'm on the microphone. They gave me some great advice early on about what we were talking about. Let your personality show. That's what people want to see. Stoop really just in terms of letting that improv training out and letting that stream of consciousness flow. And, I asked him a couple times about his soupisms, and I was like, how did you come up with it? Because I just said it, people laughed at it, and I said it again. And I've done that with a couple of things now that are in the ethos that like I've heard thrown around and I'm like, that was my phrase. Like I did that. And Sean, I still maintain is one of, if not the best director I've ever worked with.
Wow.
He comes from a live production background. And so he just had this innate ability that he knew exactly when to say things in my ear that played really well, and it was awesome. And Joe just has this ability to stay cool under pressure, and yet he's excited about it, but he never blows his top. He never starts screaming and shouting. It's always controlled excitement, like you're trying to rein it in. And that's something that I very much try to practice, that, yes, I get loud and I get bombastic and all of that kind of thing, but like I'm never, except when I'm on the podium, abusing my vocal cords. I'm never trying to go over in the top. When I'm on the podium, all bets are off and it's a thing.
Well, there's a lot of emotion going on up
Oh
there,
yeah.
man. Everybody's, I mean, last night, Dale Jr. He came into the meeting room there, holding the flag, saying, "Yeah, we're going full throttle tonight." I mean, there's a lot of things going on in those moments, so that's kind of understandable. Um, so working with those two, those those broadcasts are really, believe it or not, I think those guys are part of the reason why maybe even BRL is still around. I mean, Lowell runs a fantastic league and a lot of really, really good guys in there, but those quality of those broadcasts, when you got to move up with GSRC and come from the pit line on up, What were the first kind of races you were actually calling? Because obviously Soup and Sean were calling BRL, so you had to go to somewhere else. So what were you calling right off the bat?
That's a good question. Uh, I was at first I was calling whatever they'd let me do. Anything under the sun, let me go.
Hmm.
So I'd do some one-off events. I'd do some, special charity races, things like that, because it was the middle of the pandemic. So races were popping up left, right, and center. I mean, it was the best time to be starting in sim racing. Um, and then I started to settle in. Um, and I was working uh the Absolute Beginners League, which was Skippy's, and I
Hmm.
would work that with Soup. And then I did, I think it was the Classic IndyCar series, running the old IRL IndyCars.
Oh, nice.
Indy Racing League IndyCars, not in real life.
Yep.
The Indy Racing League IndyCars. And I called that with Justin Prince, and those were two of the first ones that I remember. And then I started doing more and more with the Precision Racing League, and I think they were running the USF 2000s and the USF 2000 Pro cars right when those first debuted, and I called several series with them. And then basically at the end of 2020, Joe and Sean talked to me and said, we want to kind of establish the GSRC booth, um, and asked me to do that. And so pretty much anything GSRC had to offer, I was first come, first serve. And so I was able to jump into a
Nice.
whole bunch of broadcasts. And that's where I was doing, NASCAR, GTs, open wheels, Lotus 79s, which I still love. I love that car.
Well, I was just going to ask you, what of all the different disciplines, cars, whatever, what was your favorite to call?
Um, Probably the Lotus 79s. They
Wow.
were super fun. I love that car and I love calling those races because it's a hard car to drive. And so folks make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, particularly in GT ranks, you see a lot of precision driving where they know how to not block, but drive defensively enough to prevent somebody from overtaking. And you run into a lot of tracks where, oh, it's a great lap to hot lap around, but it's not the best place to overtake. Thinking of places in real life like a Sonoma, for example, or on the sim, Phillip Island is a great example that I love those two tracks, but they're not really conducive to overtaking. And so you get a lot of sort of precision driving where it's just nose to tail the entire time. Um, but in the Lotus 79, somebody was always making a mistake.
Yeah.
And anything open wheel on an oval, I will be in heaven. I mean, that's my happy place.
That is awesome. I would have never thought that about the 70. I've hopped in that car. I own the car. I've hopped in it a few times. I don't think I've ever raced that car once.
I
Um,
did. I actually did. It was the one season of professional, sim racing I did. I did the Lionheart Retro Series for a year. In the
mhm.
79, running ovals and road courses. Didn't have the best season. I had some really bad luck halfway through the season, but in my first race, I did get a podium at Homestead. So I will hang my
Nice.
hat on that. So
Very cool. Well, you talk about, being kind of shipped all over the country now here with Indy Next and all that kind of stuff. I'm kind of curious. Is there a bucket list kind of event that maybe somewhere, would like to call, or even a bucket list event that you'd like to attend?
I mean, for me, it's the Triple Crown. Um, Le Mans, Indy, Monaco.
Yeah.
I would. That is the ultimate professional goal. I can retire and hang my hat that I have done
Mic
well.
mic drop.
Yeah, that's like, yeah, I've called the Triple Crown. I'm good to go. I got to work Indy this year on big screens, which was the most surreal experience of my life.
I imagine.
Doing a grid report from the front of the grid, um, talking about the history of the 500 and doing that. I was running through Gasoline Alley and the bus lot, interviewing all of the drivers and talking to them. And, it was just bizarre. And it was really cool because I grew up 20 minutes from the Speedway, so I still have a lot of friends and family in that area. And
Oh, how cool.
there were plenty of people that had no idea I was doing it. And my phone's blowing up. I'm getting texts and, Instagram messages. And they're like, "Is that
How
you?"
how cool is that?
Yeah.
How did IndyCar find you? Or how did you find them? How did that connection happen?
Um, so it was a series of things that all came from sim racing. Basically, I I started working for SRO in 2021. I jumped on and did some just some virtual sim races with them, and then uh they had a position open to do PA for their races live. And so I was asked to come and fill that position, and it was like 8 races a year, and it was amazing. And then from there, I just started to reach out to more people and grow. And one of those organizations was Trans Am. And I was asked, this was last year, 2023, I did the Detroit Grand Prix, and I did Nashville, the Music City Grand Prix with them. And I got myself doing PA work with them. I got myself on IndyCar's radar as a result of that. That I kind of popped up, and they were like, "Make note of this guy." And then I also, at the same time, in the off season, was emailing anybody who I could find an email on. That
Nice.
looked like it was the right direction. That I was just like, "Hey, don't know if you're the right person to talk to, but I'm a commentator. I want to do this. You know, here's my reel. Let's talk." And I emailed some folks at IMS Productions, and they wrote me back and said, "Hey, you're on our radar. We don't have any openings right now, but we like your stuff." And I was like, "Great." And then I was
That's almost like the the pretty person, whether you're man or woman or whatever, that hey, you want to go out? Well, I'd really like to. Yeah, I've been checking you out, but
yeah, yeah. And then fast forward, I'm at PRI. I'm working PRI with SRO, and I'm walking down Main Street in Speedway. We're going to Charlie Brown's for lunch, and I looked at my phone and I got an email, and they said, "Hey, what's your availability for next year?"
oh wow.
Um, and I,
Did you drop your phone?
no, but to quote my buddies who were with me, my feet did not touch the ground. They were just levitating in a heel click all the
I,
way down to Charlie Brown's.
I can imagine. How many times did you look at your phone then that day to make sure it was real?
Oh, a million times. Um, I mean, it was, that to me was just surreal. That
Yeah.
was my 5-year, 10-year goal, was to be working with IndyCar. That was what I wanted to do when I decided I want to make this my career. And to have that come so quickly, and to have such a wonderful community in IndyCar when I got there to help me continue to grow and progress as a commentator and get better and better and better. It's just been the best team.
We're talking about racing industry, and most people improve like behind the wheel. They improve by getting more seat time, more lap times. Um, you know, Obviously you can't broadcast. I mean, I suppose you could with iRacing, but you don't broadcast 7 nights a week. So how do you? I hate to use the word train or even practice, but is it repetition, like just getting more gigs, or I mean, what do you do to trained for that. I hate to use the word train because you're not. You know where I'm going with this, but
Yeah, I know exactly where you're going with it.
yeah.
No, it's you get as many chances at the plate as you can get. I cut my teeth doing at least a broadcast a night.
Mhm.
7 days a week, just boom. But I would get done with work. Come home, sit in the sim, and call a race. And sometimes 2 or 3 or even like 4 a night. Like it was when it was at its peak in 2020, 2021, it was insane.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you were
and
saying 2 or 3 broadcasts a day.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I was working with a couple of UK commentary places that like I would be doing stuff in the middle of the day and then jump back in at night so I could do East Coast races and then West Coast races, and it was nuts. Um, but no, I mean, and that's the same advice I've given to a couple of folks as well. Is just use sim racing as a way to hone your craft, to figure out what it is, to figure out how you want to be presented as a commentator. And then when you get into the real world, you can surprise people with, "Hey, I already know what I'm doing."
Yeah.
And really get yourself in there, and the same is true for me now today. Um, the season for me officially ended last weekend. I was at Austin at Circuit of the Americas with Trans Am, and that's my last race of the year until next year. And so I kind of caught it at a weird time in terms of the iRacing calendar because we're in like season 8 or week 8, week 9 right now. And so a
Mhm.
lot of leagues have already booked their talent for the upcoming year for the upcoming season. But for me, when 2025 season 1 rolls around, I'm gonna throw myself back out there, and I'm gonna get back into the booth and be doing a couple of broadcasts a week, and just keep that blade sharp, so that I'm ready to roll. And I've already jumped into a couple of swing broadcasts here and there that I'm like, yeah, I'm around. Why not?
You mentioned, you're trying to stay sharp and all that. So, what you learned from sim broadcasting to real life broadcasting, how much was that of a leap then? I mean, outside of actually having people around you and a guy with a camera in front of you, I mean, how big of a leap was that?
Um, 1-to-1 when it's booth to booth. Um, Actually, there's not that much difference. To truth be told,
Wow.
biggest difference for me was, and I mentioned this earlier. I've since kind of pared down my setup. I used to have like 8 monitors and just all of this craziness.
Jeez.
Oh, it was nuts. I now have 3. Um, but when I was doing that, I had all of these overlays and all of this information that I could pull in and soak in that I was watching, cascading lap times and sector times and throttle inputs and all of this stuff, using that to my advantage to be able to better call this race. And when I got to the real world, I went, "Oh, crap. I'm lucky if I've got if I've got a TV monitor that's giving me a feed, if I have my laptop with timing and scoring, and if I can see maybe a corner of the track." And so you actually have to be better on your feet in real life because you can't rely on all of that information. That was the biggest change for me. And the other thing is in now with what I do, the more pit lane and reportery kind of stuff, um, you really have to have a much better sense of nonverbals, of driver body language, of things like that. You really have to be able to read the room. Um,
Oh,
to approach a driver to do that. Now, you can steamroll your way in and just go, "I got to get this interview," and do it, but I recognize that these drivers are putting it on the line, and you got a really frustrating moment. And I'm always like, I always make a point when it's a rough day at the office. I kind of apologize and go, I'm sorry, I got to get this. I got to talk to you.
Yeah.
I really,
And they know the gig.
oh, well, 100% they do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just one of those sort of Hoosier courtesies that I just sort of prevail out with. But yeah, and to me, that is the hardest part of what I do today, is that I have no formal journalistic training, anything like that. So that part of my game is something that I'm learning on the fly. Yeah.
That is very, very cool. Well, you've had a heck of a year. Also, talk about kind of your personal life here, but you just got engaged this year, right? And marriage is coming up. Tell me a little bit about how that happened.
I somehow met, and this amazing woman, Meg, continues to put up with my shenanigans. She still thinks I'm funny, which I clearly she's, not right in the head, but
So
no.
you've pulled the wool over the eyes.
Yeah,
Check.
exactly. Exactly. No, but it was a really wonderful situation, kind of cute. We had talked about getting engaged for a long time. Found a local jeweler and went and picked up the ring, and
Nice.
I I was going to attempt to wait a little bit to ask her to marry me, and basically realized I couldn't do it, and I had to ask her the night that I got the ring, because I was going to lose it. um but yeah, we're really excited. We're really excited for this off season.
When's the date?
Looking at September 27th of next year. That fits beautifully in my racing calendar. Um,
Well, who's gonna, is that gonna be on YouTube, your YouTube channel? You got broadcast that, right?
well, we might. There may be a couple of viral moments that go out. We have had a conversation about, like, why would we hire a DJ? We can just put on a playlist and we know commentators. Just give them the microphone.
Yes. Not only do you know commentators, but they know you.
Right, right.
Um, so songs could go with stories. That'd be a pretty cool night, actually.
Yeah. So,
Um,
but we're really looking forward to it.
are
This
you
off
guys are you
season,
guys registered anywhere?
not yet.
Oh, see,
We gotta jump
you
on it,
should
but
you should have jumped on it, because then we could have said, "Hey, go here and find them," and say I could have helped you there.
you could have plugged us.
Uh
That's on us
yes.
for being
Well,
lazy
you
and
know what?
moving
You
around
know
too
what
much.
though? Maybe I'm sure of it. We're probably able to have you back.
Okay,
So we'll
all
try
right,
to have you back before that. So
done.
get those things done, and we'll we'll get that promoted out for you.
All right, that sounds like a
Um,
plan.
very cool. Well, that is so cool. You're such a good guy and everything else. It's so good to hear that kind of stuff happening in your background. So everything, I mean, my gosh, the things that you've got going on professionally and have that private part kind of piece of that all together and all of it meshing at once. You're a lucky guy,
It,
that's for sure. And
I'm very blessed,
yeah,
and I'm very, very fortunate with Meg. I will share the story that I love to tell, which is very early on in our relationship. I was coming back from Sonoma, it was like St. Pete, or some track. Um, and she picked me up from the airport, which we live in Los Angeles. So picking somebody up from LAX is a
yes,
commitment. If somebody picks you up from LAX, that means they love you.
yes.
Um, and she picked me up, and we
Or,
were talking.
or actually, you flying into LAX might mean you're a little insane. So,
Well, I've gotten to the point where I have been recognized by, like, the TSA pre-check people. They're like, "Oh, hey, DJ." I'm like, "Hi."
oh
Uh,
God,
yeah, I fly
you're
that
the you're
much.
the you're the norm of the airport. That's not good,
Uh-huh.
man.
No, it's not. But anyway, she's driving me back, and talking about the race and all of that, and we had a very honest conversation, and I just said, this is going to get worse before it gets better in terms of me flying away. And that's the truth, and that's what it is, and that's what it will be. And I said, I don't want to make sure you're okay with that, because this is my calling. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And she looked me in the eyes and she said, "You have the biggest, stupidest grin in the world when you come home from a race. That is your happy place. I would never ask to take that away from you. We'll figure it out."
So would she let you go broadcast at Monaco or Le Mans without taking her?
Well, I've taken her to a decent amount of races this year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I took her to. She came down to Long Beach. Which was
That's a bucket
great.
list one for me.
So cool. She came to Indy this year. She came to the 500, and she came up to Portland. So she'll go to a couple of them.
By the way, did you see iRacing's getting Portland?
iRacing's getting Portland.
Oh, cool! I said that like 2 episodes ago. I wish they would bring Portland in.
Yeah,
so
it's like that and NOLA are like the 2 tracks that I'm like.
Oh, down in New Orleans. Yeah.
I say NOLA's not the greatest track, but it's like a lot better than you think it is. It actually produces some really interesting racing. But I'm excited for Portland. That's gonna be really
that's cool though that you can take her along to those things too, though. So
yeah,
very, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, one other thing I kind of wanted to touch upon with you is, next year with Indy, and they're switching broadcast partners and going over to Fox, but they're gonna push the envelope from what I understand, and bringing things out, and including giving Indy Next a shot on FS1. Is that correct?
Yeah, all Indy Next sessions are going to be broadcast on FS1. All IndyCar races are going to be on Fox proper, and hopefully their streaming service that they'll be putting out here shortly. This is huge for the series.
Oh, it is, especially, and I know it's Indy Next, but that is going to be able to give IndyCar to develop such a bench, because all of a sudden you're going to have sponsors and all that are going to fund those teams.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I mean, that's huge.
It's not just what's great about it is it's not just 25. That the schedule is relatively static from 24 to 25, but 2026 combined with this new deal that we got from Fox is going to be a banner year for IndyCar. I mean, we have this incredible Grand Prix of Arlington that everybody.
Oh, that's right, around AT&T Stadium. Yeah,
that's going to be super cool. I have heard the talks have kicked back up again between IndyCar and Mexico City. I don't know if it's Mexico City or if it's just Mexico.
At the same the GP track down there, I presume, right?
That's what I would assume. I don't know. And I've heard that there is another potential race that's floating around. Maybe another 2. So, the more races that IndyCar has, the better.
Yes.
We need to be back in Texas. That's going to be fantastic.
They need to expand the season. This whole thing of being done what the end of August or first week of September.
Well,
yeah, I gotta go a little further in the year, man.
the problem is, and that's part of the reason why Fox paid so much to do it.
Oh, because it cuts off before football.
That's why they cut it off when they do, is because they don't compete against football. And Fox was like, "This is a win-win for us." Like it's done. It starts after the Super Bowl.
But for us IndyCar fans, we get screwed.
Oh, I don't disagree with you. And June and July, I'm on the road every weekend. But
yeah, all right. I mean, money talks, I suppose, and NFL, much to my chagrin, is king. But I'd rather watch an IndyCar race than an NFL game. But
I would too. But
I'm in the minority. You and I are in the minority.
We are, but I think
It's okay.
genuinely that the series is in safe hands.
Yeah.
Um, Roger's level of love and devotion to not only the Indianapolis 500 but to IndyCar as a whole is really second to none. Um, Everything that he does is carefully measured. It may not
Yes.
happen as fast as some folks want it to, but that's because he is exploring every option and making sure it is the right decision going forward.
Yep. And
And
Roger is very good about forward thinking, not,
yep,
almost like playing chess. He doesn't look at a move ahead. He's looking at 3, 4 moves down the road, and that I think's been the key to Roger's success
yep,
in across motorsport, across business. He has got an uncanny ability to read the tea leaves, and I mean, the guy, everything he touches turns to gold. I mean, he's Midas. I
yeah.
mean,
And I think this deal with Fox is the first of many wins
yeah,
that this series is going to continue to have. Um, and truthfully, eh, it's the 500, man. And
yeah,
I got to tell you, there were some races this year where attendance wasn't as spectacular as we really wanted it to be.
yeah.
But for the most part, my goodness gracious, St. Pete, Road America, Mid Ohio, these bastions of American open wheel racing that we always talk about, Indy, they were packed to the gills.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
the 500's been the best big big time race the last 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, I
yeah,
thought it was better than Daytona. I mean, and to each their own. And
yeah,
but at least in my opinion, those IndyCar races, they're at the 500 the last 3 or 4 years. I can never recall in the 100 and some odd years that they've been running there that we've seen so many great finishes so close together.
yeah,
I mean, every year it's almost like that now. So they're doing
yeah.
something right there.
They're doing something right. And truthfully, it is a testament to that event and the work that goes into it that, you know, we had a 4-hour rain delay this year. And I heard stories of folks leaving the track, that they lived in Carmel or Westfield or whatever, being like, I'm going to just go home and wait this out. I heard multiple stories of folks that did that left the speedway, went back home when they're like, all right, we're going racing in an hour. And they're like, all right, we're going to drive back. They had the same parking spot that
Wow.
people didn't leave. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, it was weird to work my first 500 like that and have the little bit of the breakup and that kind of bizarre situation going into it, but it was incredible. Um,
Yeah. Well, and the emotion at the end, everything else, like you said with Pato. I mean, we went from what was that, Scott Goodyear and Al Unser, and we had to
yep.
wait what 20 years before we had the one with Marco and Hornish, and then
Oh,
all of a sudden, like I said, the last 4 or 5 years, it was starting about the time. Oh gosh, who was it that wrecked coming out of four?
it was J.R.
Um,
Hildebrand wrecked out of
Hildebrand.
4, and Dan
Well,
took the win.
yep. From that point forward, there's only been one or two that was settled on that last before the last lap. The rest of them have
Yeah,
all been. I mean, it's been incredible what's gone on up there.
it's amazing.
Um, yeah,
And like I said, I'm lucky enough to have been there for all of them, and it's there's no place like Indy.
no, there's not.
Meg, my fiance she didn't grow up with, well, she kind of did. Her dad, her family is South African, and so when she was growing up, her dad was big into F1 because of Jody Scheckter, and South African world champion and all
Yeah.
that. She kind of grew up watching it a little bit, but
Oh,
you know
very cool.
didn't
Yeah,
really get
that's
into it. She walked into Indy this year and went,
Yeah, of all the tracks, I have to imagine the great cathedrals of sport, whether it be Yankee Stadium, even Daytona, um, you
Lambeau.
know, Lambeau, uh, you know, Indianapolis, and maybe it's because I'm a racing fan, but I can't think of another venue other than maybe Yankee Stadium
Yeah.
where you walk into and it hits you, the history, bam, hits you in the face right when you walk in the door. And anybody that, if you're in the Midwest and you got a few
Yep.
hours or want a weekend trip, go to the museum, take a
Wait,
ride around the track, and it's just amazing.
they will open up the museum in March or April of this year.
Oh, that's closed. I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
They're doing a massive renovation on
Oh,
it.
wow. Okay.
Redoing the whole thing, making it multi-leveled. So it's
Hmm.
not just, you used to just kind of go in and you're like, this seems like it should be a little bit bigger. Like, this is really cool, but they're
Yeah.
opening up the basement, making it multi-layered. Actually, one of our neighbors is on the design team that did all the design work. It looks
Wow.
spectacular. So
Wow.
check that
Now
out.
I'm gonna go back. Now I'm gonna go back
Oh
just
yeah,
to do that. I've been there a couple, 2, 3 times just to
yeah.
go to the museum, not even race, but just to pop in there and go to that. And yeah, would you say that was when they're reopening it?
I think March or April. It'll be open for
Okay.
the 2025 500 for the
Well,
100.
there you go. You should go, even if you can't make it on a race weekend, go down there and look at the museum. If you're a race fan, that should be a thing that
Oh
you
yeah.
do for sure. So, um, well, very cool. And man, I tell you what, you're giving me an hour of your time here, and I really appreciate you stopping by. But can we do a quick green white checker? It's kind of a little thing that I like to do with three quick topics and three of your knee jerk quick answers.
Fire away, man.
All right, you ready?
Hit
For
me.
you, IU or Purdue?
Oh, IU, without question.
Indy Road or Indy Oval?
Indy Oval.
Sprints or midgets?
Sprinters. And don't get me wrong, I can't drive one in the sim to save my life, but sprinters.
Well, not even the sim, but to go watch. Because
Sprint.
you got Indiana Sprint Week with the sprinters, and then you got
Yeah,
also with the midgets.
yeah.
So you
But
can't go wrong either way.
no, but
It's just
non-wings. I grew
a
up on
non.
non-wing sprints, so the true
Uh,
insane people.
wow. Well, very cool. And you know what? Usually right here we have whoever driver we have on. Where we usually preview the upcoming race, and for BRL coming up, it's going to be at IRP, which is in your old stomping grounds there.
Yep.
And can you tell me a little bit about, some of your memories? Not only, I'm sure you've been to
Oh,
IRP,
many times.
some of your memories about being there, and maybe some of your iRacing memories at IRP.
Yeah. I remember going multiple times as a kid. I don't remember it per se, but I've heard the story told that we were there when I must have been, or my dad was there. Excuse me, my dad was there. I don't think I was there because I would have, I was too young. But there was this young California kid tearing it up, and my dad said that kid's going someplace, and it was Jeff Gordon. And so we saw him there. I remember just on a Friday night, looking up the newspaper and going, "Oh, let's go run down to IRP." So and so's some series is running. One of my favorite memories was I got back from college one year, and this must have been early May. Nothing really started at the track yet. And Sprinters and Silver Crowns were running down at IRP, and my dad was like, "Let's go." And I called two of my buddies and said, "Hey, you guys want to come down and go watch some racing with us?" And one of my good friends is still, he and I are like this in terms of racing to this day. Um, and we just had the time of our lives out there, sitting watching. And at one point, I remember looking over, and there was a guy in an arm cast coming up, and it was, may he rest in peace, Justin Wilson. It was when he broke his
Oh, wow.
hand, and he was just coming out to the races. And so that was really cool to see. On the sim, I have many good memories of running there. It's such a special track because you run the second lane, and that's the fastest lane in most cars. So
Yep.
that's really cool. Um, I remember at one point I was running, I think it was USF Pros, or maybe just USF 2000s, around there. Went into an open session, and it was me and Roman Grosjean racing against each other. And
Very cool.
this was when he was still driving for Haas, I think. It was before he'd made the IndyCar switch, and I schooled him. I absolutely beat the pants off him. I think he wrecked into the wall, and I was like, I beat a Formula One driver. Let's go.
Yeah, I've had one experience with an F1 driver, and it was Fernando Alonso.
Really?
And yeah, it was on the road course at Homestead, and dude was lights out, number one. But I've had about a handful of starts in the real world on asphalt, one of which came at IRP. And my memory of IRP is, and I shouldn't even call it a start because I didn't even make it to the night's events. It was hot lapping, and something happened. I forget what it was in the right front suspension of I was driving a midget, and going into turn one, something snapped, and I went right off into that wall. And that to this day was the single hardest hit that I think I've ever experienced in a race car. I mean, my seat, because those containment seats kind of wrap around your ribs. I bent that stuff straight. My body did. And, that's metal. And you could read, Simpson across my chest from the seat belts. And man, I'm telling you, I couldn't move for 2 days.
I bet.
That was my memory of IRP. I've had 2 starts there, one there, one where I didn't make it, and then one we came back and I was fortunate enough to get in a late model there. And that joint, but it's fun. But you're right about driving up against the wall, and that's what folks can look forward to Saturday night. Everybody's used to everybody fighting for that low line. Saturday night, you're going to see us about as close to dirt as what you can. We're all going to get up on that high line, run that cushion, both ends of the track, and that does. You're right. That makes for a lot of fun. But you talk about precision driving. If you got to go fast there, you better be precise where you put that car, or that track will bite you in a blink of an eye. So
it really will. It really will. It's one of. It is to me the antithesis, or the absolute paradigm of what short track racing in America should be. Kind of quirky, little unique track that you've got to sort of know the ins and outs of to be really fast there. There's little eccentricities about it that you've got to learn. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and there's slide jobs. You can pull slide jobs there.
You can pull slider.
It's not dirt. It's not dirt, but by God, you can use the slider. You can pull that out of the toolbox there.
Yep.
So good times there, and we'll look forward to some good racing here this week. So once again, though, man, I want to thank you for stopping by here today.
My pleasure. Thank you guys so much for having me, and hopefully I'll see you on a race or a broadcast here soon.
Absolutely. Hopefully we'll get you driving. I want to see you driving. So, you have to get a whole lull and say, hey, I'd like to start one of these races.
Yeah, I'll see if I can maybe pop in.
Awesome. Well, thank you. That is DJ Clark, and I am John Hine, and thank you again for listening to our conversation right here on VGN Weekly.
Coming up on VGN. It's once again doubleheader Saturday on November 16th. VRL's modifieds and late models will be at Indianapolis Raceway Park. On Tuesday, November 19th, VGN Weekly's podcast with John Hine and special guest Brennan Myers. And coming soon, VGN's debut of the Red Light Racing sanctioned Skitter Creek SK Modified Series will be on January 9th, 2025. The broadcast debut of the inaugural Yesteryear Racing IROC Series is on February 18th. And the VGN debut of Yesteryear Racing's 1966 Tour Modified Series is on February 25th. You can see our full schedule at virtualgrip.net/calendar.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of VGN Weekly. Join us next time for race recaps, interviews, and much, much more. Please like and subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of our broadcasts. If you are a league owner or potential sponsor and have a broadcasting need, please visit virtualgrip.net for info on how to get in touch with us. This has been a production of the Virtual Grip Network and the Skidder Creek Motorsports Group.